an apocalyptic war across the plane. Among the 7 dragons who survived, 2 remain in eternal conflict. They remember Dominaria, and their home remembers them. 10,000 years ago, an empire spread across the continent in the northeast. Power stones fueled the nation's advanced machines, but slowly poisoned those who worked near them. From the sick and suffering, a wayward physician created terrible monstrosities. When the empire erupted into civil war, the charlatan escaped, ushering his experiments through a portal to an artificial world beyond the realm. 5,000 years later, 2 brothers were born on Dominaria. Their fascination with the fallen empire's ancient machinery fueled archaeological digs and research. As they unearthed more secrets about Dominaria's past, the eldest became deeply jealous of his younger brother. Their rivalry scaled to all-out war. The older brother stripped the land of resources to assemble his mechanized army, while the younger brother experimented with melding flesh and steel. Their rancorous feud culminated in the detonation of a world-shattering bomb. The explosion annihilated armies, altered weather systems, and entombed Dominaria in ice. 3,000 years passed, and the land remained covered in snow. From the peaks of the tallest mountains to the depths of the murkiest swamps, Dominaria's landscape was paralyzed in the bitter, freezing cold. The Ice Age marked a crucial chapter of the plane's history, and the floods that followed defined the shape of its continents that are still visible on maps today. Then, the twisted physician Yawgmoth invaded Dominaria again, manifesting as a black cloud of death over the swamps in the west. With him, he brought his monstrosities, creatures called Phyrexians, who devastated the plane's ecosystems and sowed mayhem onto its people. But the people resisted. A new weapon was deployed to destroy the Zealot, and in the wake of the blast emerged new rifts in the fabric of space-time. Through these rifts, Dominaria's mana drained away, and the worlds became all but uninhabitable again. Everything decayed into acid rain, dust clouds, and salt dunes. Apocalypse had arrived. As these rifts expanded, time collapsed onto itself. The past and the future collided, history unraveled into nonsense. Dominaria was in ruin. The last hope for survival required altering the structure of the multiverse. Only through the magic of the Great Mending could the land heal again. Ecologies were restored, towns were rebuilt, and within mere decades, Dominaria was healthier than it had been in centuries. So it remains in the present day. Littering the landscapes now are rusted machines overgrown with life. Lakes fill craters. They are the scars of cataclysm and war. Memorials to ancient civilizations have become monuments in these new cities. Just outside their walls, root wallas bathe in the sun beneath an open sky. In this peaceful time of renewal, Dominaria reflects on its tempestuous history. But across the desert sands, echoing in the ancient caves, the evils of the past are stirring awake once more.
We're dealing with Dominaria here, and it is a massive plane.
It is a continent with a huge amount of history, and that history is kind of expressed in the very landscape of Dominaria. Like the bones of a real planet are mountains and rivers and things. In Dominaria, that's ancient giant war machines. In a lot of ways, we kind of know that this problem is going to come up. We know we have to do multiple basic lands in every set. And so during the concept push, when we bring the concept artists in, one of the things that they're doing is doing concept illustrations for all these different landscapes. What does a swamp look like in Theros? What does a swamp look like in Ixalan? What does a swamp look like in Dominaria? Those always need to look distinct so that if a player looks at a swamp illustration, they know what plane it is just from what's in the picture.
Yeah, we actually tried to do 3 basic land cycles for this that kind of hit on that idea of like history within landscapes. We have 1 cycle of basics that is all Brothers War automatons. 1 is all Phyrexian ruins. The last one is legendary artifacts and artifact creatures as they relate to the environment. Mark Winters and the team from the original Dominaria did such a beautiful job updating this plane. You actually feel the variety in all of its cultures.
Right, there were 10 different major cultures in the 2018 Dominaria set.
Yeah, and we're going to see them all here, basically, again. We expanded on it a little bit.
Right, we saw Yavimaya, which is one of the islands in Teresiere, but we didn't see New Argive, which is, to my mind, the thing that we really expanded on the most here.
The most exciting part to me is like seeing the present and then the past, and how far they've come and how their culture's changed.
Right, because it's been 4,000 years. Waves of migration come in, different cultures have mixed with theirs, so they have a very distinct kind of like techno-Scandinavian thing going on. It seemed thematically appropriate here to focus in on them, kind of show where they are now, and then we'll get to see where they came from in the following Magic set. Teresiere and New Argive in particular is the setting of Antiquities, Ice Age, the Dark, all these different sets. All these different events happen that would radically change their architecture and their technology and even their ethnic features.
Everything there is kind of based around Balduvian's triangle tattoos. You see it in their actual armor designs. We made this super cool city that actually, it's shaped like a triangle that sits out into the middle of the ocean, and it can fold into itself. It makes me so sad that like Magic sets are not animated. You can see this, but it can like go into defense mode and fold into itself.
Right, because New Argive, the nation of New Argive in its modern incarnation, is the union of these Ice Age era kingdoms, Balduvia and Kjeldor. So we see this fusion of 2 cultures, Balduvian barbarians who are this sort of equestrian steppe culture, and the Argivians who are more like agriculturally based and artificer based. I love how so many of the buildings have like giant cogs and gears, and like this building is an artifact. It's made of clockwork. It feels very distinct from the other white factions in Dominaria and just all the other factions in general.
And we get to see Falcon Riders again.
Oh yeah.
Their buildings still play up that idea of like being a steppe nation, a steppe culture. They've got like platforms that the Falcons can take off of. One of the things we wanted to see in this set was a lot of team up moments. Various cultures helping each other out, especially as they're faced with this new threat. This is the best place for sagas just because of how many cultures are present on this plane.
Like a lot of medieval tapestries and such show a progression of images. Sagas are vertical though, so it tends to go more top to bottom, but you do get to sort of have that sequential image process where you get to see what happened before and after. The art style of the saga card is ideally represented in sort of the style that culture would create.
Right, it's an in-world art expression. One of our artists actually did a physical wood burning. Anytime the artist can play around in a way that they wouldn't normally do on like a regular cinematic approach Magic card, they love that.
At the beginning of the DMU story, Karn is alone and afraid. He's haunted by fears that the new Phyrexians aren't content just subjugating Mirrodin, and he's right. Sheoldred has arrived on Dominaria and has spent months replacing the ordinary citizens of the plane with Phyrexian sleeper agents ready to serve her at a moment's call. Karn finds allies in the planeswalkers Jaya and Teferi, the immortal archmage Joda, and the Argivian noble Sten. While trying to rally the forces of Dominaria against Sheoldred at a peace summit, they discover that they're too late. Sheoldred activates a group of Benalish sleeper agents, sending the gathering into chaos and forcing Karn and his allies to flee. Even Sten, in the end, turns out to be one of the Praetor's spies. So there's all this fear spreading throughout Dominaria, all this paranoia, which is playing right into Sheoldred's hands, and Karn decides the only path towards victory is to use himself and the Silex as bait. If he can lure Sheoldred into open combat with whatever allies he can gather, he can stop her divide and conquer strategy once and for all. But as he's preparing for this final confrontation, He gets a message that there's someone in his inner circle that can't be trusted. Shieldred has a spy in his coalition.
My first introduction to Dominaria was when I was in middle school, opening packs from Dominaria. There was just all of these characters like, oh, there's some knights, some Benelish knights that look like me.
It's a diverse plane. It's easy to find something on Dominaria or someone on Dominaria that really relates to not necessarily even just how you look, but like, this is my personality. Mm-hmm. This is a person who I personally really relate to Karn.
There are so many different human groups and elves. That's me. That's also me. And so I just see things in Dominaria that are recognizable and resonant for my life. Actually, I think like one of my favorite parts of the set was seeing how clever the art directors and the writing team had been to hook into characters you've seen randomly appear in other Dominaria sets, suddenly appear on a card. Like, I recognize that person, and you know, they're not necessarily a named character, they're not a legend, but they are an inhabitant of Dominaria. And so just seeing that reinforcement of this is a plane with a lot of history and just people living their lives, and it was just so much fun.
Yeah, one of the things I love so much about the set is that theme of hope. Dominaria is hope. Like you said, it came back from basically the dead, right? Like, this plane was decimated and it came back. And so to me, it also represents human ability to keep moving forward and to keep making things better even when things are completely dire. And if that's not relatable right now, I don't know what is.
I mean, we were definitely working on this when we were all working remotely. The card set is very Dominaria is in renewal. It is hopeful and springy, and yes, there's some sleeper agents, but it's generally a very bright and colorful set. The story, however, because it's focused on the sleeper agents and the threat of Phyrexia, kind of gets to play in that darker Phyrexia horror space.
It felt like such a mature and intense and deeply consequential story. We open up on Dominaria already. Karna's already there, and I'm just wondering, you know, as a new reader, like, why is he there? How does he know something's going on, and what in the world is he actually looking for?
He has a deep connection to Dominaria, so it's not surprising that he's there. He can sense something's off. He understands Phyrexia. He understands the threat that they pose. He does not want them to gain a foothold on Dominaria or really anywhere. Everybody else is like, not quite sure. Like, things seem fine. The plane is in renewal. Everybody's getting along. They're having peace talks. And he then starts to find evidence of it and encounters some of the sleeper agents. And he starts to, like, distrust everybody. So, like, now he's quizzing and testing his friends and his allies of, like, are you a sleeper agent?
So one of the things that I noticed immediately reading this was that there's a lot of mention of the Weatherlight.
Yes. The Weatherlight is an airship, and its crew is a group of legends that have been around Dominaria for a very long time. They know the risk of Phyrexia, and so as soon as they kind of understand from Karn, they help gather the planeswalkers that are there and then help take them to the vast distances of Dominaria to recruit other allies from all the different groups.
And they split up and they say, okay, we've got to get more allies here. We can't just go up against the Phyrexians on our own. If they really are here, which we believe that now, let's go ahead and let's get our forces together. Let's fight this while it's still only on Dominaria, because they know better than anybody that if this threat makes it past Dominaria, it's big bad news for everybody in the entire multiverse.
The Phyrexians are transgressive. They just are. And it's like, what is the most transgressive thing they could do? They could turn the symbol of the coalition, the thing that defeated them in the invasion, into one of them. Like, what could be more upsetting than that?
There's
Turning the Weatherlight into a completed Phyrexian gross monstrosity with like guts hanging off the bottom. That was bold.
Yeah. This set has probably the greatest amount of legendary characters that I grew up with and I have personal history with. It includes like some of my all-time favorites. Urtai, for one, he's back, and I am just so stoked about that.
Liliana was born here.
Liliana, this set is also seen in the ruins of her old home in this set.
Oh, nice. For a Johnny who's not a native to Dominaria, What was kind of your angle for illustrating Ajani?
We wanted Ajani to feel connected to this plane, and a great way to do that in a plane full of legends is by showing him being legendary. Jaya is an interesting case as well, because where we didn't really see her much in the flesh in like old sets, like now we actually get to physically see her fight and actually be as badass as she was when she was younger. We get to see her sort of become her younger self. I know she's like a very aged character at this point as far as magic terms are concerned, but we actually get to see her be as badass as she is in my mind.
She doesn't have Chandra to take care of now. She can
Exactly.
let it all hang
She's
out.
cutting loose. Karn has his trademark sash from Dominaria 2018. He's wearing that again as like a honorary to his creator, basically, in his home plane.
I feel like I got to know these characters so well in this story and got to really love a lot of them. And then cry a little, of course.
A little bit. I mean, if we're doing our job right, you're gonna cry a little bit.
It's just so inspiring and so hopeful. It becomes less about, I'm not gonna put myself in this war, and more about, I have to defend Dominaria.
We're not gonna let it fall into the hands of the Phyrexians.
Of Sheoldred,
Yes.
this monstrosity looking
I mean,
amazingly.
isn't that just all the Phyrexians?
That's true. Sheoldred specifically gives me creepy crawlies.
Just spider
Because
vibes.
of all the legs.
Spider vibes.
It's like, yeah, breaking down into tiny spiders is a no for me. I don't like it.
So now that we've gotten the bird's eye view of Dominaria, it makes you wonder, how does it look through the eyes of the people that call it home? Let's go back to Sam for more on how some of Magic's most iconic characters see the plane.
Dominaria is entering a new era, and two planeswalkers who call this plane home look to its past to inform their place in its future. Returning home stirs memories of enchantment, memories of grief, memories of regret. When Teferi looks out onto the plains of southern Dominaria, he remembers his youth as a prodigy in the academy. He recalls his lessons under its ambitious headmaster, his affinity for practical jokes, and the laughter of his best friend. Alongside these rosy recollections are heavier memories too, memories of war between his people and being trapped in slow-moving time. The dilating effects still cling to him like heavy robes in a rainstorm. Dominaria in the abstract is Teferi's home, but his true place in the world he can never reach again. When the Phyrexians invaded, Teferi phased his island home completely from existence. He saw himself as their most powerful protector and felt solely responsible in keeping them safe. But when the rifts were eventually sealed, his home was forever suspended outside of time. Now it is nothing but an illusion in the clouds, a void that lingers as a stinging reminder of his greatest error. When Teferi returns to Dominaria, he comes only to visit his daughter. As she ages before his eyes, Teferi is reminded once again of how precious and cruel time can be. Karn, the great silver golem, is also burdened by regret, by the way his actions have shaped the fate of his homeland. Memories of his creator are immortalized in stained glass here. The sunlit mosaics remind Karn of his greatest victories and his worst defeats. He places his hand on the globe as an oath to the world's safekeeping, a promise to redeem his mistakes from years ago. Karn tried once before to create a plane in his own image, a metal world called Argentum. But the world was contaminated by a virulent Phyrexian oil, which manipulated its steward and corrupted its geography. When Karn returned to his creation, the plane now named Mirrodin was completely overrun by Phyrexian influence. To save Karn from the contagion and prevent further infection, one of his closest allies sacrificed his life. Karn carries with him this burden, wrapped in the memories of a long-lost friend. Ever present in Karn's mind is his failure to keep Argentum safe. His quest to reassemble the bomb that once destroyed Dominaria affirms his desire to be the greatest force in the Phyrexians' unmaking. He looks to the stained glass windows for guidance. Both of these heroes seek redemption on Dominaria. Teferi cannot rescue his home, but he can fight for the family he still has left on this plane. Karn cannot rescue Mirrodin, but he can fight to protect Dominaria from suffering a similar fate. Each of them has grown wiser by the power of this place. Neither of them are the children they once were at the Tolarian Academy eons ago. Looking out onto their home plane now, Karn and Teferi see wildflowers decorating the sweeping vistas. The forests are lush with flowing streams and tall trees. The islands are surrounded by clear and vibrant waters of aquamarine. In the meadow, a rootwalla opens his chest onto the sun. It is a beautiful spring day on Dominaria.
All right, that's all we have time for today. And while we learned a lot about Dominaria, there's still more to come. Be sure to tune in live for Wizards Presents on Thursday, August 18th to learn more about what Magic has coming, as well as a Dominaria United debut video full of card reveals and a few last twists to the story. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.